And now it's time for the main event. Tahira Goldson, my friend and CNA Simulations VR's instructional designer. She's a global training expert, and we met because we were both working in senior care when Tahira was a former home care agency owner. So she has a lot of experience working with CNAs, supervising CNAs, and so on. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand this entire adventure over to Tahira.
Awesome. Thanks so much. There we go. Welcome to everyone. Thanks so much for joining tonight. I know that it's difficult to carve out time with everything that's on our plate. So I really appreciate you joining and setting aside the time and giving your attention. So I am currently, I'm in Maryland. I've been here all my adult life. But I am from originally Georgia, and we don't have here an amen corner, right? But what we do have is reactions. So across the bottom of your screen, if there's something that I say tonight that resonates with you, you're welcome to hit a reaction with a heart or a thumbs up, thumbs down. But you're welcome to give those reactions or to react in the chat to just let me know what points we might need to expand on for future seminars and which ones are really something we might deep dive into. I'm also going to go ahead and start a poll that we'll answer in a couple of slides, but I thought it would be this is the question that keeps coming up for me, and I have heard some not so surprising answers and surprising answers. So I'd love for you to go ahead and make a few choices there. You don't have to only choose one, but I think it'll be interesting to hear what experiences are common across the board and which ones might be unique to folks. I think I want to thank Charlene for doing such a great job introducing me. So I'll just scoot on past that. But my name is Tahira Goldson. I'm an instructional designer. And my experience has been with state departments, with the International Trade Administration, and now I'm working for a tech company in Silicon Valley. But for 5 years, I owned a home care agency and participated in forming trainings right in tandem with my director of nursing. So I really have a passion for engaging CNA students. And along the way, I want to share what I've learned in both of those capacities there. Okay, so the first thing I want to start with is I want to say that a lot of you, well, you know what? The movie's old now. If you don't remember, that's okay. But there's a movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? I don't think I'm going to add that to my slide, right? So given our last 12 months, I'm going to put the good, the bad, and the gratitude. There's a quote that has really been floating around in the last 12 months. Is life may not be the party we hope for, but while we're here, we should dance. And I think that the education sector and the health sector have had to do a lot of pivoting, a lot of regrouping, a lot of being flexible, and a lot of dancing in order to meet the challenge of our times. So I just want to say, let's take a moment to be grateful that we're here for ourselves, that we're here for our students, given what's been going on in the last 12 months, right? So whether it's by grace, by luck, by skill, by the ability to adapt, or all of those together, kudos to you. I feel like teaching is sometimes thankless, and healthcare is also sometimes thankless. So I'd like to take a moment for you to appreciate yourself and those who joined on the call just for showing up. So part of the ugly that I wasn't going to put on here is just what we're overcoming, right? In the midst of a global pandemic, with lives lost, with libraries and schools closing, disappearing jobs, police violence, civil unrest, and a change of national administration. There have really been some hurdles that have distractions that are way beyond our control in the classroom. So to be able to focus on what we are able to pivot and engage in is really my pleasure, because there's so many things we don't have control over during this time. So I'd like to take a moment and say you're remarkable. And you can give yourselves some kudos before we even dive in and I start asking you questions about how we can alter our delivery. Awesome. Okay. I would like for you to ask yourself, think about this. What's one thing that you've accomplished or that you've overcome this month? And I'd like you to really consider that. What we're going to do is take a moment. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to partner you so that you have an opportunity to share about how you're doing with one accomplishment. Now, here's the thing. This can be a professional accomplishment. This can be something that is really small and a personal accomplishment. It can be really big, really tiny. Every win is a win, but I would love for you to share. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do that. Some of you may have 3 and some of you may have 2. So don't be surprised if you do. Okay, awesome. You may need to accept when I send out this invitation. I'm going to give you 3 minutes and the topic is, what is one thing that you've overcome in the last month, the last 30 days, or that you've achieved? Okay, I'm going to pause the recording. I'm resuming recording.
Mhm.
Welcome back. Welcome back. I see our numbers are climbing. I hope it wasn't too awkward for me to throw you in a room with as soon as you join the call, but I think it's a great way for us to get to know each other. Thanks so much for being good sports about that. I want to share the results from the poll, but as soon as I'm done doing that, I'm going to ask you to report out about the thing that you were proud of, that you wanted to share. Okay, so in the polling, we said, what's the biggest distraction for your students this year? And number 1 with the highest votes was other people in the home. I've heard that one a lot. But cell phones were a close second. Personal motivation was a really big one. And then some of our other votes here were housing, food, or transportation issues. Those are real concerns. Using class time for social media or other work. And then using class time to groom, cook, clean. That was one of the ones that didn't receive a lot of votes, but still got a few. So I'm going to share those with you. And give you a second to see what I am seeing. Yeah, we had 13 folks say it was other people in the home. So that's really consistent with what I've been hearing. If there's something that you think that should have been an option on the poll that is not an option, I would love it if you could drop it in the chat and let us know. And I'll add it to future polls, or we'll also update you in the Facebook group. Okay, so time to report out. What's the one thing that you've accomplished or that you overcame this month? I would love for you to either unmute yourself and share verbally, or to share that in the chat.
Hi guys, I'm Julie. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. And the one thing that I shared with my partner that I was able to overcome was actually meshing my in-person students with my virtual synchronous students using different technical devices that I could actually have my synchronous students participating within whatever my in-person students were doing.
I think that's great, Julie. Thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of folks can probably relate there in the chat. You have network availability here, working instead of going to school, being 100% virtual, juggling childcare with schools closed, and big distractions for the students. Is there anyone else who wants to share about some of the things that they've overcome in the last 30 days?
I'm Jean Hawkins. Can you hear me? The biggest thing while teaching the CNA program, I had a family member that was very, very sick in acute care. And I took care of this person, this family member, coming out of direct care. And not only when you're teaching, when you see the person that in real time, and you're applying the skills in real time. When I think about the students retrofitting in the home health setting, it becomes so clear to how important it is for them to gain principles and be able to apply it no matter what the situation occurs, which occurs a lot in healthcare.
I think that is that's a really relatable sharing. There's so many folks who I have when I was working with the home care agency who might have to take a leave from being a CNA because they are the family caregiver. So I'm really glad you were able to do that in this time where so many people can't connect with their loved ones, can't connect with their friends. Okay, I appreciate your sharing. You can continue to share in the chat. And I think it's important to pat ourselves on the back for the little victories and for the big ones. And in this session, we can do that with each other because we know once we hang up, right, that there's not a long line of people waiting maybe to pat you on the back. So we're going to do that here. And I'll start sharing again so that we can talk about.
Tahira, I'm just going to jump in for a second.
Sure.
Because I have the whole gallery of everybody up, Shanita looked like she was about to jump and say something just as you stopped. Was I right, Shanita?
I was just going to say that one good thing, and you were right, yes. I was going to say I'm not only teaching, but I also, I do some home care myself and stay in the line of fire. And I have a little guy with a trach and a ventilator he and his twin brothers have a lot of nurses that come in and out of the home. So I think a good victory would be that he and myself and his twin brother and mother have remained COVID free since COVID started, even with all these people in and out of their home, including myself as well. And even us being in the school setting, we return back. And so it's by grace that, it's all around you, but you don't get touched.
Right. I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a big feat. I know that folks have taken every precaution, and it's just something that we haven't seen in this generation or the one previous. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, I want to talk to you about, the things we've already done on this session that engage us. Some of you have students who are very young adults, like high schoolers, and some of you have students of all ages. And I would say across the board, regardless of age, there are a few things that apply. So there's some ways to engage your NA students. One is icebreakers. So I think sometimes we think icebreakers are fluff or they're unnecessary or that they're just time fillers. But I think it's really important to take a step back. We did that sharing as an icebreaker, but to take a step back and remember that as human beings who are in this time period, probably more distracted or have more pulls, more tugs than we've ever had, it's great to have a palate cleanser, an opportunity to kind of share and do something to bring you into the moment. When you are about to take a class or to engage. And the icebreakers can be related to the material. They could just be, things to bring folks into the room and be present. So we've done so far in this session, icebreakers, poll, we've utilized the chat. We have responded to folks by name, and I think that's really important. So I want to talk about, we did icebreakers, we did partners, and some folks had groups. But in the partner group one, we used a breakout room. But one thing that I think has been effective that I've been hearing across education, both in professional corporate education and school settings, is that the hybrid partner, the hybrid group, is also been something that folks have been leveraging. So you can have maybe one in-person student paired with two virtual ones, or however those numbers would line up for that apply to you. But the nursing assistants that are virtual can support in a different way than maybe the person who's present and in the lab. They might be able to give verbal instructions and practice walkthrough, but it's just something that you can leverage that can bond your nursing assistants in training, but as well as take the load off of you and help to redistribute some of that, some of the challenges of being not all in the same space. The last one here I have is crowdsource. And that's, we use polls, we use chat. When you use polls or chat, it's really important, if we're talking about engagement, to follow with a verbal question by name. So you can do the poll and you can say, you know what, Sally, thank you so much for your comment, your response in the chat. Can you tell us a little more about that? Or I see we got such and such as a #1 answer. Joe, did that surprise you? That's one of the ways where you can keep people engaged in a way that prevents the temptations of multitasking and being distracted, because just like in person, no one wants to be called by name and have no idea what's going on. We don't want to do that online either. And then the other crowdsourcing is group chat. So some classrooms have used things like Marco Polo and GroupMe in order to have a multi-screen experience. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But the main thing here is, if folks are so distracted by their phones, you can also incorporate the phone both synchronously and asynchronously, right? Everybody together or at different times, where a group chat can start to build some of that rapport that you lose that would just happen between activities in the actual classroom. Okay, so if you want to, I'm gonna move on to my next slide and to honor our time box. But if you'd like to share, if you've been doing this with your students, which one you feel like is one that you've been doing that's been effective, or which ones you feel like are the most likely ones that you'll try, then that'll be great and we'll get that feedback. So icebreakers, partners and groups, and crowdsourcing. Now, I dove right into engagement in a really technical, microscopic way, but I want to talk about setting the stage, things that we can do in order to set the stage before folks even come into the classroom to help with the engagement. And this doesn't mean before a semester starts. It could mean that, but it could just mean before your next session or before you start to really regroup and adapt and pivot to employ some of these techniques. So in terms of setting the stage, I know I hear folks across education, across professions in schools all talking about, oh, the students or the employees, or if they could just get it together, right? But we know there's some things that we can do and things that won't make us crazy. So the first thing is, the rules have changed for us, so we have to change the rules in some ways. I think it's really important and underrated for healthcare professionals, for educators, for the folks who are on the front lines teaching our nursing assistants, to be kind to yourself. I think that we always think, or I think it's really misleading to think, if I could just pull this all-nighter or learn this new technology or visit every student's home twice a week or something like that, that we can fill the gap. But the truth is there's a gap that we can't fill. And the best way that we can proceed is we can be kind to ourselves and be honest about where our limits are, so that we can begin to do this work in a way that is sustainable and doesn't burn out the folks who have the most experience. So be kind to yourself. Do less. I'm going to show you some opportunities to do less on our next two columns. Expect less formality. This is a really hard one, I think, for I think it's very generational, right? When you're talking about the greatest generation, the baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, I think there's a progression of less formality. And so that's already been an issue pre-pandemic, right? So now that we are having class in our bedroom in our bunny slippers, right? You're going to see less formality. You want to try to be flexible without lowering the standard. And then this last one, this is key. If you were looking for what is the main takeaway from tonight, like the thing you don't want to miss, you want to try to engage in some level every 10 minutes. This doesn't mean that if you have a flow, you don't stop. You stop the flow because you have to do something, right? But what it means is, incorporate it into your flow. You can remember to say, hey, Jane, hold on just a second. perfect example of multitasking, right? You want to engage every 10 minutes, and that doesn't mean you stop what you're doing if you're in a flow, but what it can mean is that you can say, you know what, Jill, you know this point well, or can you speak to this? Or you can incorporate that poll, or just one thing to kind of poke folks and let them know that they're there. You can drop questions in the chat that you don't ask verbally, and see what kind of responses you're getting along the way. Just a way to start to pull people back in. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for virtual training. So engaging every 10 minutes is a great rule of thumb, but you can adjust that timing to what works for you. Okay, so the next column over is frame expectations, right? And this is now for your students, for your nursing assistants in training. I would encourage early log on as the standard. So I would say if class starts at the top of the hour, you can say 10-minute login is when you're expected, or 5-minute login is when you're expected. Some folks even do 15 minutes. When you're in person, normally you would have a chance for a student to come in, and as they trickle in, natural conversations happen either between instructor or nursing and students, or between the nursing assistants themselves. And so early login provides that open time. If you unmute and say, hey, listen, how's folks' days going? Or whenever you log in, make sure you say hello, or you introduce yourself in the chat, or anything you can do just to create some open space is helpful. I would ask for folks to power down phones. Now, this is a really hard ask, so I put an asterisk because it may not happen, but it definitely won't happen if you don't ask. So you can ask about powering down phones, and I talked about some other options if that ends up not being a real option for folks. I know that folks are parents, folks are kids, you know, are helping siblings, folks are standing in the gap for their parents. So I know that may not be an option. Okay, early log on, power down phones. I would encourage you to ask your participants, your nursing assistants, to join with both audio and video. As an instructor, it's really crucial to be able to read the room, not just who's dozing off, right, but who just has a furrowed brow and may not be quick to ask a question. You want to be able to see that, and you can't if folks don't have audio and video on. I would, they can mute, but I would encourage them to unmute when they have a question. And these last two things have, were kind of born out of grade school, but folks are using them in the professional world now as more people are working remotely. So you know the trifold display boards that you use for science projects as a kid growing up? They're really inexpensive. I think they can range from like $1 to $3. Well, folks have used these at home, on their dining room table, on their bedroom floor, in a corner of the house, like a cubicle. Like it's kind of like they can put up reminders, their notes, during a session, but it tends to block out a lot of the noise, and it allows them to be able to focus in a different way. So it's a really small ask, but you can encourage your students, hey, this is an option that's helped folks to concentrate, and I really want you to be set up for success. The last one here is consider a dress code. And this is really, I never thought I would say this, like I am not a dress code person, but because we're at home and there's so many things that are inconsistent, and there's so many disruptors, having the consistency of saying, you know what, a scrub top is $5, like they start at $5, or can rate, like a set can be like 10 to 15 on the lower end. You know, consider investing in scrubs, which are going to serve you well, right? But consider having them wear them every day, but after maybe a certain date into the program. And I think it's a great ask. It may not be a great requirement unless you're providing them, but it's a way to get them in that professional mode, even though their setting is not necessarily an office. So before I get to this last column, I'm going to pause for a moment and see if I'll ask Charlene, are there any questions in the chat, or are there any questions in the group where you'd like to unmute and say, hey, this stuff is great, or some of this stuff sounds crazy?
Tahira, I can say that people have been providing really interesting feedback on the tools that they've used to keep students engaged, and Kahoot keeps coming up over and over again. So there aren't any questions, just a lot of great suggestions.
So I think that's awesome. Yeah, actually, so what we can do is we'll capture that, and maybe we can share some of that as a work product of this particular group. It was something I was going to ask later in the session in terms of work for you. But yes, it's so funny. You read my mind. Kahoot is coming up later in the session. All right, awesome. So this last column, make room. This is counterintuitive, but I think it's critical if you're expecting your students undivided attention. I don't think you're going to get undivided attention if you're teaching for 90 minutes or for 8 hours. You're not going to get undivided attention all the way through. But for pockets of undivided attention or real focus, you have to be able to make room. Joining early is a way where you can make room where students don't feel like they can be distracted but still participate. Joining early allows an open space where if they have something they want to share that's distracting them, they might be able to share it and then class can go on. Bio breaks. So I think it's a huge mistake that folks have made where you jump right into the teaching and you're teaching for an hour or 90 minutes or 7 hours, and you don't have built-in breaks where you know that for 5 or 10 minutes, that student can count on, okay, every day at noon, I know that I am going to be able to step away and prepare my child's lunch and prepare my own lunch and go to the back. Like there's so many things that are happening in terms of managing a household. You just want to build that time into your course so that you don't have students logging off 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. They can do that at the same time. You can leverage it. Study hall. This is one of those things where I talk about doing less. So bio breaks gives you an opportunity to breathe as a nurse instructor or as a trainer, as an educator. But study hall is a really cool one. And if you use Zoom, if you have video conferencing in your learning management system, you can set up a link that says, every Friday from 12 to 1, there's going to be an open link. And if you want to study together, the link is going to be open for anyone who wants to log in, right? So that's not even something you have to manage unless you peek your head in and say, I'm going to be available at the first 10 minutes, or you don't have to manage a study hall. This is an opportunity for the nursing assistants to engage with each other, but in a way where you've created space for them. Teach backs is another one that I think is really underused, but super valuable, where if you're giving, if in your lecture, you are covering 8 topics and you know that maybe 7 might be a little bit easier to grasp, you can assign 2 nursing assistants, students to cover that topic, for them to research and be able to deliver it, to teach it to the class. And then as they're teaching, my little side note is I would try, unless they say something egregious, right? You don't interrupt them while they have that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes to present. But when they're done, and you have an opportunity to give feedback, you would say, great job, but you don't want to grab the patient by their arm if they're falling down. Like you give them the course correction, but it gives them an opportunity to experience mastery of the material as opposed to just being on the receiving end of things. And then the last one here is making room for giving permission for folks to acknowledge distractions. So I would set a standard, if it works for your classroom, to say, okay, every time you step away and I don't have your attention, I need you to put a be right back. I think it is fundamental, whether you are working with high school students or older adults, like a wider range, that you let them know you're not asking them to ask you for permission. What you're saying is, if we're going to do breakout rooms, if we're going to have partners, if I'm going to ask questions, I need to know whether you're there or not. And we know that everybody has divided attention. That level of responsibility allows them to begin to exercise this muscle of setting their own boundaries in a place, in a time where I feel like boundaries have really been shifted. And that's going to be a critical skill in their career, but for them to master things going forward. Okay, so I think we're doing really well in terms of time. We're about 20 minutes out, and I only have about 3 or 4 more slides. Okay, so I wanted to touch base with, my slides are not advancing. There we go. More stage setting, and then I'll talk to you about some more ways to engage, and then we'll maybe go back through and talk about the ways that have worked for you. Okay, so more stage setting. We are not above bribing our nursing assistants. So if you say, hey, you know what, that early login or powering down your phone, if you can show me that you've done that for 2 weeks in a row or for a full week, instead of wearing scrubs, have a dress down day. Or maybe I'll give you one pass on a tardy. So maybe you normally mark them tardy at the 5-minute mark. Maybe you give them 5-minute grace period as a part of incentivizing some of those things you can enforce, like powering down the phone, like a dress code. And I think you can be more creative about what the incentive is, but I think it works a lot better than saying, you know what, if you don't power down your phone, or if I see you talking, then that's an automatic X, Y, and Z. It doesn't go as well as incentivizing just historically in education. You can give them, if it's permissible, right, a 30-second lead on a quiz. These are like the informal quizzes, like Quiz Daily or in Kahoot, as opposed to like on a proctored exam. And then maybe you set up 10 minutes with a guest. So in your network already, you probably have students who are alumni. You probably have other folks who are career nurses. You probably have folks who are in HR, and maybe not even in HR and healthcare, but HR and healthcare is preferable. You might say every quarter we're going to have a really brief Q&A with a special guest, and the only folks who get to go to that are folks who have logged in on time every day, or folks who have Zoom can give you a report for how long that they've been on. You can say for anybody who is missing more than 10 minutes of class by shuttering, by turning off their video or something like that, you know, you're not going to be able to hang out with this guest. So I would say go the reward route as opposed to the penalty route as much as you can, because there are going to be real penalties for folks not being able to master direct care, right? Okay, so the second one over is consider alumni. You may have students who have already graduated from your program, and this doesn't have to be like 500 students, right? This could be 5 or 2 or 3. You can bring them back virtually and have them as guest speakers. That can be done synchronously or asynchronously, right? So you can have them, you can do a Zoom call with them, record the call, play back the Zoom interview in your actual class, or you can have students access that interview, whether it's on a closed YouTube channel or in your learning management system. You can have them do a one-on-one virtual coffee. So say, hey, you know what, 3 years ago, you were my star student, and now Anita is my star student, and I would love to pair you up for a 15-minute virtual coffee break where you both get your hot beverages and you can just give her the tea on the industry, right? And then if you really have a lot of active alumni, an opportunity to mentor, you can reach out to them and say, would you be able to reach out to this person 3 times during the term or 5 times during the term just to check in and see how they're doing? And I think there's been such a demand on people working in the field that this kind of giving back would be really welcome and an encouragement on both sides. So you have a win all around. Okay. Last column for this one. I've set some expectations. Some of them are not going to work, right? So when in Rome, you may want to consider enlisting family members, right? So if family members are the biggest problem, or people in the home, you can say, you know what, on Thursday, we're going to ask you to tap someone in your household to demonstrate. We're going to use them as a model or to demonstrate gate belts, right? Or something, you know, something that is not going to get everybody hurt, right? But I feel like it would be a great way. It's kind of a more mature version of show and tell, right? Folks can kind of say, hey, this is my loved one. It can get I think the family and the household a little bit more respectful of the instruction that's going forward. And it's a way to deepen the bond of that cohort of nursing assistants who are working together. So that's one thing to try. I would try incorporating phones if the powering down phones will not work. So I would try using GroupMe, using Marco Polo, having a discussion going on during class where maybe you have 5 questions that they have to answer by the end of class and they can put it in their feed in that group chat. So, hey, if you can't put your phone down, then guess what? You're about to have demands on every screen. And you can do that in a fun way because folks, this generation in particular, right, they're native digital, but it's also a way to reduce some of those distractions of the Facebook surfing and all of the alerts that pop up. And then the last one, and this is really, you really have to judge whether this works for your environment or not, is you can do a wish list. You can say, if you if you have $20 or if you have $15 that you can spend towards your future career, here is what I would ask you to do. I would ask you to buy a $10 set of scrubs, maybe, right? I might ask you to buy some of the tools that we use in clinical that are really inexpensive, right? So maybe if you got 12 purchases of the dental tubs or or gloves, just whatever the supplies are that you think would be really inexpensive, you can say, here's $10 or here's $20. Even the trifold that I mentioned, right? You can say, here is the wish list for not being able to join. And you can do that in a way, again, where if it doesn't work to require it, that you can do it as a soft ask. Hey, listen, I'm going to give you everything that you need to succeed in this class as much as possible. However, if you would like to do this part, this wish list, then here's some things that can set you up for success even further. Okay, awesome. So I want to ask right now, something that I think folks have been answering all along, but I want to open the floor for you to do that formally, right? So what are 1 to 2 solutions that have made the biggest difference for your classroom this year? And this is a time where I would encourage you, you can unmute if you would like, and share, or you can drop those answers in the chat, because I'm sure you've been on the front lines. Oh, also, if there's something that you said that was like, that you heard me say that was, hey, you know what, this absolutely is crazy and that would not work in my classroom, feel free to share that as well. All right, don't make me call on you by name. Awesome.
What was the question again?
The question was,
I'm
share
sorry.
some things that worked for you. And people have been doing that in
okay.
chat. Yeah, but I think this is an opportunity where you really do have the floor. I want to say that while I'm opening the floor for folks to share, and I know we've done this in the chat, I want to thank Julie from Texas and Shanita from Delaware for helping me prep for this, by sharing some of the challenges that they had, but also some of the creative solutions that they were working with. So I don't know if Julie wants to share about Swivel or Pivot, but I'll just open the floor. Just know you're ready. It looks like, Cherie, did you want to share?
I guess I can share. I'm a little scared, but I can share.
Don't be scared.
I'm not perfect. One of the things I've been having a couple of challenges with our district is that, you know, they have told our students that are remote that it is not mandatory for them to come online. So most of our students are, you know, they are remote with asynchronous instruction. And so even if I tried to tell them, hey, babies, you need to come to class virtually, they're like, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm not trying to come to your class at 7 o'clock in the morning to 10. So I was like, okay. So what's been helping me out is basically, well, I used to just talk over my PowerPoints, and I was like, you know what, y'all not listen to these PowerPoints. So let me just find some YouTube, some people that's done it already, and just post it on there for y'all remote people. And then whoever's in class, we're gonna do our thing. So I've really flipped the classroom a lot this year, where I've utilized YouTube lectures or stuff like that, or I've lectured myself over PowerPoint and posted it. And then whatever we come to classroom, whenever it's just lab time. So they've already got the theoretical instruction online. And then I open up the floor, you know, for the flipped classroom, open up the floor for questions, but then we use the classroom platform so that we can go ahead and practice lab skills and things of that nature. So it's been kind of hard trying to get them engaged due to the fact that they have had this had this directive from the district that they don't have to engage, So I was like, okay, well, whatever. So I was it's kind of hard to motivate them to engage when they've been told that you don't have to, and to be asynchronous and, things of that nature. So that was my thing.
I
So
really
flipped
appreciate you
classroom is my
sharing.
thing.
Can I
Yeah.
jump in
Thank
here
you.
for just a
Oh,
second? I
oh,
just
of
wanted to
course.
jump in, Miss Watts, and you and I have been communicating a lot on Facebook. Our district was told the same thing, but here's my tie-in for that. I call the families directly. And even though the district says that, that no, they don't have to, we started from day one that if you want to do this, this is about people and this is hands-on. So I called and I teach in the high school, and I said to the families that, I'm teaching them skills with people. I'm teaching them how to interact with people. And there's only a select few that can take this program. Not everybody in the school gets this program. So I know that the school might have said they don't need the Zoom, but for me, in order to stay over here, they need the Zoom. And so I am fortunate that I do have my students for 2.5 years, and our program has a very good reputation. And so the tie-in for that is too that I had a district that said they didn't have to, but for me, my requirement is that they have to. We're doing something different. A lot of times, the district doesn't even understand what it is you're doing. Most of the times, parents know that if they know that you really care about their student and you're putting in the effort, they will get them to what they need to do. And your students will know. Listen, we writing tight up in my room. I don't play no games. I didn't say we perfect, but we are writing tight. And they know that we're not playing no games, period, point blank. So it maybe, not that you want to go against your district, but you just might want to, have your students buy in, because when you get done, they're going to get a job, and you're going to create a different kind of atmosphere for them and a different lifestyle for them. They need CNAs every day, all day long, somewhere. I was a CNA myself for 3.5 years while I was going to nursing school. And I'm telling you right now that even though when I started, you only made $6.95, but I'm saying they came a long way, nowadays. So, you get your students to buy in, and you tell them, listen, we need to come to class because we're doing something that nobody else is doing, and tie them in, buy them, get a buy-in, let the parents know. Listen, and especially if you giving up your time and you giving up yourself, and even my most parents that want to fight against me or even think about it, 9 times out of 10 they succumb, because their children will fall in love with the fact that you're putting so much into them, and so you know they do buy in. They do. And I'm not saying be a
I
rebel at
think
your district. I'm just saying, do what you need to do. That's not what I'm saying.
no, I appreciate you sharing. Like we're just sharing what works for us, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really helpful. And I think there was a good question, DL. I'm gonna wrap up with you in terms of this section. There was a great question, which was, is everybody teaching high school? And it looks like there's a really good mix here of community college, of open to the public, of high school instructors. So thanks so much for being a good mix. DL, did you want to share what's your biggest obstacle and what's working for you?
Actually, I kind of wanted to just comment on what they were talking about, having our students not wanting to show up for, like, I guess their theory or whatever, but at 7 o'clock in the morning. So is that what everybody's like class time is? Is that their kids are showing up at 7 o'clock in the morning? Because like with COVID, these high school students and younger 20 somethings, they're like coping by staying up at night playing games and things like that, or talking with their contemporaries, and then then not going to bed till about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then asking them to show up at 7 o'clock is
Rough.
in a normal time, it is
Yeah.
great. But during this time, that's kind of like I can see them being unwilling to do that. And I can understand them being unwilling to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. If you could hold your question, Marilyn, I have one more slide, and then I actually have a slide that's just for Q&A. If you could hold your comment or your thought, I would love that, so that I can make sure that I'm not going over on time unless just the Q&A goes over. So this last slide is what are my last wrap-up tips in terms of being engaged. I saw folks sharing in the chat that you have engaged guest speakers. You can tap professionals, you can tap seniors. And I think a really great question is, what do you wish your caregivers knew before they walked into your home, right? You can tap those with chronic illness. And this is great since we can't do a facility visit in most places. We can't just hang out at the home to have them join. And it may be folks who are in your network. So folks who, your neighbor, folks who, your loved ones, your family, or it may just be folks who you know in general and professionally. This can happen, I mentioned asynchronously or synchronously, right? And activities. So I saw in the chat, you mentioned Kahoots. There's another one, quizdaily.com, where you can create really cool pop quizzes that we've used with some success. I think Kahoot is way more fun, but Quiz Daily is also another tool there. But you can do no tech and low tech games. So if you did icebreakers or group activities that translate to tech, don't forget about them just because people aren't in the room. One of the underused things is interactive whiteboards. They're already built into Zoom or to LMS. It's really good to use them if you want to put up a picture like a diagram and have students label it. It's super simple and there's not a high learning curve. In-class quizzes, and then this last one is you can do activities that are term or semester long. One of the ones that I think is most popular with a CNA school that I used to work with very closely is getting to know you ones, where you kind of have questions about people all the way through the semester, and then you can kind of test them on it. So who's the oldest person in the class? Who's the youngest person? You know, who just had a baby? Whatever. It helps to deepen the bond for folks to really have to go through this together. And I think that'll help them post-graduation. Okay, so I would love it, love, if I'm going to open the floor for questions, but while I'm doing that, if you could go ahead and share in the chat one takeaway that you have from this session. It can be something you read in chat, something that I shared, something that Dr. Brown, Charlene had shared, some of the conversation, but if you have one thing that you're getting to take away tonight, please share it, and then I will stop sharing my PowerPoint and open the floor for feedback here. So Marilyn, yes, I can't forget about you. Please share.
I just had a question. I want to say it, Ms. Watts, when you were saying that you were using, like, you record your PowerPoint and the students can go back and review later. What state are you in? Because in the state of Arkansas, the only way students get credit for their hours is that they are with me or with my co-instructor. So we are not allowed to record, and they can look at PowerPoint. They can look at it, but it doesn't count towards their time in class. And so I found that very fascinating that you all have that capability, or did I misunderstand what you were saying?
Well, the management, the learning management system that we're using is Schoology. And so how I'm documenting my hours for my students who are asynchronous. First, one way I'm documenting hours is when they're on Schoology, they have activities. So I've timed my out, like this, if I have a 3-hour course for that day, I time my lecture or the video that I'm doing, and I know it's like 45 minutes to an hour, and then they have some other type of activity that they have to do. So they have work to do during those 3 hours. Once the Schoology logs them in for the amount of time that they are on my page. So if they're on my page for 3 hours, I can document that as that they've been on my page for 3 hours. Also for my labs, if they are doing return demonstration, then they have their own YouTube channel. So when they put their own YouTube channel, when they put their skills on their YouTube channel, I am able to document that time because I time that, how much time they put on that YouTube channel for their skills. So, and then if there's skills that they cannot do on YouTube channel, then I go ahead and they still have to come to class for skills that they can't do at home, like perineal care or ambulating a patient with a walker, whatever they can't do in class at home, then they have to come to class. My class is 3 hours long, so they get time for coming into class. So I might tell them, hey, you need to show up for at least 6 class days, 6 class lab days, because you couldn't do those other labs that was covered, like a full body, like a full body bath or hair care, whatever we were covering. I'll say, okay, you can't do that at home. You got to do that here. Vital signs, they can't do that at home because I don't know if they're doing blood pressures correctly on their patient or whatever. So they have to check off there. So whatever they can't do at home, then they come to class and then I clock that in.
I think that's really
And then whatever
valuable.
we're doing virtual.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you
I
so
mean,
much for asking
yeah,
that question and for sharing,
yeah.
Miss Sherry. I would really love it if we could, I know we're getting close to our time. I just put in the chat, our new end time is going to be 8:10, but I would love it if these kinds of conversations would continue in the Facebook group or in our LinkedIn group, however you heard about it, because these are the things that make it easier. Like the only way we're going to get through this is if we're all doing it together, really. I would really like to go through and share some of the things that folks have given as feedback, but did you have one more thing you needed to share, Miss Marilyn?
Oh no, I just found it fascinating because
Yeah,
in
I agree.
Arkansas, they cannot record videos. Whenever they get check off on the skill, it must be in person. So I'm finding all of this wonderful. It would make my life a lot easier.
Yeah, hopefully
But everything must be done in person
to catch up. Yeah. I think
Well, this is Mindy. I don't know what states we all represent, but I bet you we're going to find differences. Probably, it sounds like we're all from different states. And I think here in Washington, our regulatory group is really involved in the CNA approval training program, to the point that they're probably going to require a common curriculum for all CNA programs. But they are opening up simulation, virtual teaching, which is good. So anyway, I was curious, especially when Sherry was talking about her situation and people being able to record and send back, because I'm not sure that would fly here.
Yeah, I think there's huge differences, but I think we found that across with COVID policy, with delivering education, everybody is on a different page. I think that's a great point. Thank you so much, Mindy. So I wanted to take a look at some of the answers for the folks who may be too shy to unmute. So let's see here. Oh, so there's a question about whether the PowerPoint slides will be made available. So a recording of this webinar and the handouts will be made available. Most of you found out about this at all because you're a part of one of our communities online, and we will deliver that in those communities. So thanks, Vicki, for that question. How involved in the CNA training approval process? Oh, that's a deep question. So that's what you shared about, Mindy. Okay, I love this, Karen. I did a virtual field trip to Body Works Museum, and that was one of the things that have worked for her. And then also Karen says, you can get in touch with the volunteer coordinator at a nursing home or the long-term care facility. That would be a really good guest speaker.
That was for the pen pal.
Oh, for the pen pal.
People were asking about pen pals for elderly, and
yeah.
They really are. My father himself, 88 years old, living in a long-term care facility, but he's in an independent living, but they're starving for some sort of socialization because they really have been in isolation, social isolation since last March. So getting in touch with a coordinator over at one of those facilities, they would definitely probably be able to set you up with some sort of pen pal situation.
That's a brilliant suggestion. Like really cost effective, really impactful. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. I have one. Oh, Celine said they did a virtual Board of Nursing disciplinary procedures field trip. Students loved it. I feel like, whew, that would put the fear of God in me. So that's a great idea. Let's see. I love the idea of engaging students with fun activities in the middle of class. I would love to know. There's something about a booklet here, so I'm going to have to catch up in the chat. But what I would love it is if you are paying attention in those communities, we'll continue to report out the things that we're able to glean from this. And then you'll also have access to visiting the recording. I think some of this is about those early morning start times. Oh, Bookit, not booklet. Okay, sorry, that's another tool. We'll submit a list of tools. And but give us some time on that, right? And then there's a lot going on. Oh, I have students. Oh, we're talking about who teaches what. So yeah, I really appreciate, first of all, it would have been impossible for me to teach a class on engagement and have students or have attendees, right, who wouldn't engage. So thank you so much for playing along and being great sports. You demonstrated, you modeled the behavior we want to see in our students. So for that, I am truly grateful for not making me sweat online. I would love it if, I think what'll happen is as soon as we hang up, you'll have questions for each other. You'll have questions for CNA VR simulations. Just know that the conversation doesn't have to stop here, and we'll continue them online. So I would like to take a moment to express some appreciation for Charlene for creating a space for us to be able to connect. I think the only way we'll be able to move forward is together. So I just want to give her some reactions and thanks in the chat for making a space for us to be able to connect tonight. And I'm going to barring any announcement from her, I'm gonna say that we should go ahead and wrap up. Charlene, did you have anything that you needed to share before we close out tonight?
I just wanted to say I'm so impressed with all of you and the discussion in the chat and the questions and the comments. And I don't remember who it was in the Facebook group that was like, we should get together and have discussions. I wanted to just ask a couple questions. Would you like to do this again? And if so, what are some topics you'd like to cover in future sessions? Just take like 30 seconds and drop a couple in the chat so that we can.
Oh, sure. That's a great suggestion. And that can be your exit, your announcement. You can say, here's what I want to talk about. And then we can go ahead and wrap up. So I think we're kind of true to our new end time. We're at 8:09. And I said our new time would be 8:10, but you guys hung in there. I think only maybe four folks weren't able to stay on for the additional 10 minutes. So thanks again for joining. I really appreciate it. If you have some thanks in the chat, or if you have another topic you think will be good, you can drop it in the chat, and you can definitely start a post about it in our online communities.
Thank you. And also, let's take a moment and celebrate and thank Tahira Goldson for sharing her expertise and insights as an instructional designer. So virtual round of applause. I'll do my little emoji.
Oh, your applause. That is awesome. Look at that. So thanks for saying that. We did that just in the nick of time. So we are at 8:10. I want to bid everyone good night. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you in the Facebook group or the LinkedIn group. Have a great night and hang in there.